thanks for joining us again today. We appreciate you still being here and tuning in. Our last presentation of the day is with Franco Cappa. He is the Cybersecurity Advisor with CISA, which is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. We've had Franco speak at several of our events now. He's kind of a veteran. So Franco, it's great to have you back with us. We appreciate it. And take it away. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Megan. I appreciate actually the introduction, and it's good to be here. And glad for the people that were able to stay on in the meeting, in the presentation, and hopefully I'll be able to provide some value with what are we talking about. So I'm going to talk about, first of all, who we are, so about CISA briefly, and then what the capabilities that we have, cybersecurity capabilities, and not just cyber, but let's say what we can provide with partner organizations that we work with, and I explain in a moment what that means. And you will see, throughout the presentation, actually, the message is mostly a message of resilience. That's why if you look at the first slide, it talks about cybersecurity capacity, capability, and resilience. That's in our message. So without any further ado, let me move forward. So CISA was established almost 2 years ago. So in November, it's going to be 2 years. The CISA Act was signed by President Trump in November 16, 2018. And so we existed before, and maybe some of you already remember the name we were using before, which was NPPD, or the National Protection and Programs Directorate. And so the difference is not just a name, but we've been elevated to agencies. So before we were a directorate, within DHS, now we are an agency. So with our own budget, with our, let's say, some sort of independency in the way we operate. We are pretty much, if you look at the DHS, and if you see Secret Service, TSA, FEMA, Coast Guard, and then we are at the same level. So we are, let's say, those are our sister organizations, if you will. And there, of course, it's not just a matter of name change, which in a way helps understanding what we do, because before NPPD, nobody really knew what it meant. But cybersecurity, infrastructure security, I think it's easier to understand for everybody. But also, again, it gives us that the ability to operate more independently, and therefore to be more effective. So what is it we do? Our mission is pretty much helping organizations that are considered critical infrastructure to strengthen their security and resilience postures. You can see that from the slide here, the mission and vision. But that's pretty much what we do. We work what is considered critical infrastructure. And the question then, what is critical infrastructure? So there are 16 sectors that are part of what we consider critical infrastructure. If you actually think about the DHS was established right after September 11. And then actually right after, let's say before, the 16 sectors were actually 18, and then eventually became 16 plus some subsectors. But the point is that pretty much if you look at the different sectors here that are listed in this slide, you probably recognize that it's either your organization or in a way you probably belong to one of them. I know it's kind of difficult to see, to look at the slide and see what's in there, but maybe you recognize apart from government, which is at the bottom of the slide, you see energy, you see agriculture, you see health, and of course nowadays health and pharmaceutical, it's extremely important, with the situation that we're currently dealing with COVID-19. Then you see transportation, you see finance, you see defense. There are again lots of, and of course information technology. So there are lots of let's say 16 sectors. But if you really think about it, there are pretty much there is a most organizations are probably represented here anyways. So the name of the agency, right? So cybersecurity, infrastructure security, and because there is understanding, so we understand, and actually that's also what you see in the Presidential Directive 21, which is the directive actually that gave kind of authority, to the organization to operate. So it talks about these interdependency, if you will, because it's very difficult now to really decouple, to really separate what is physical and what is cyber. Most of the, let's say, even physical what are usually considered physical security elements or controls have a cyber component. Even just a simple CCTV cameras that in the past were used by physical security guards and all that. Now it's mostly digital, right? So they use actually IT infrastructure because they are IP based. So, but then of course, it's just one example. But then, if you look at in the slide that we talked, where it says cyber attacks will soon kill people. Well, I mean, it seems to be a little extreme, but actually, it's not far from, and actually that's a reality, right? If you consider those organizations, sectors that deal, for example, with what usually is referred to as industrial control systems, so dealing with physical pumps or physical switches, so things that are moving physical parts, you can probably understand that the implication that those may have, it could be pretty detrimental and definitely have a huge impact. For example, if you go back to when the Stuxnet came out as an attack to the Iranians' centrifuges, just the fact that a malware, so a piece of software, could have actually blown up, the centrifuges. That's pretty serious, right? And then, of course, the example I usually give is also, which is probably closer to people, is those insulin pumps that people now are carrying attached to their bodies. In the past, they were using, let's say, some sort of remote capabilities to operate them. Now, for simplicity, again, the consumerization that usually we experience, with technology, of course it's easier to maybe just use your telephone. So now I'm able to control my insulin pump attached to my body, giving me, let's say, what I need and the time I need, with the telephone. Of course, if the telephone gets hacked, if there is a problem there, I'm going to have a bad day. So again, just trying to, I guess, emphasize the fact that cyber and physical at this point, are not separate things, are, kind of pretty much, part of the same, two faces, I guess, of the same coin, if you will. So, of course, then we talk about the Internet of Things, and then, that makes it even bigger. So, of course, the attack surface is getting larger, it's getting bigger. The volume of data we're dealing with every day, we actually, at this point, we don't even probably worry too much when we hear in the news that some million records have been stolen in a data breach and all that. So because it's pretty much happening every day. So again, because as I said, there's definitely a high level of sophistication. Again, the attack surface is just getting bigger. So the challenge is just growing. It's not getting any smaller or easier to deal with. So what is it we do, in terms of CISA? So our, the way we operate, we partner with stakeholders, in critical infrastructure. So we go out and we reach out, to organizations, different sectors, trying to help them out in the cybersecurity, security. Let's just say security concerns in general, cyber and physical, but specifically my role as a cybersecurity advisor. Of course, I'm dealing mostly with cybersecurity issues. I mentioned before that, we try to help organizations strengthen their security posture, so become resilient. So it's mostly, of course, a message of preparedness. So you see that some of the activities that some of the things that we do, things actually that we can offer are to help organization getting, prepared. But of course, we are also in the business of responding, because we all understand, we all know that at this point, it's not a matter if anymore, it's when, right? So we hear that all the time. It's becoming some sort of a cliche where, but because also, again, it's the reality. So things are happening. Things are going to happen to everybody. And we probably experienced that personally in our personal lives, our businesses, and all that. So it's just, something, a reality we need to deal with. So I mentioned that, myself, I'm a cybersecurity advisor. So if you look at the advisory capabilities outlined in the slide, then you have physical, which is actually called in our world, let's say, it's called the protective security advisor, so PSAs. And the PSAs are like, CSAs or cybersecurity advisor, but just to deal with, let's say, the physical part, so the guns, gates, and guards, if you will. Then there's also emergency communication advisor, and especially in a day like today, where we're dealing with hurricanes and major weather activities, coming your way. In this case, to Texas and the Gulf anyway. Emergency communication is probably, my colleague in emergency communication is going to be pretty, let's say, busy, because they deal with 911 emergency response type communication. So, that's what they every organizations dealing with. So not every, let's say, not every sector is probably going to talk to the emergency communication advisor, but more than likely, cybersecurity advisor or physical security advisors, I would say, that's definitely a good point of contact for all of you to have. Part of what we do, we are the risk agency, right? So our part of our mission, so I mentioned, we deal with cyber, we deal with physical, we deal with communications, but part of also what of our mission is to understand, what we're dealing with in terms of, from a risk perspective. So as part of the agency, there is the National Risk Management Center. The National Risk Management Center, it's basically there to help understanding the risk that the nation is exposed to. And what they do that in different ways. One of the efforts actually to be involved with was working with partners, both public and private, in establishing what they are, what they are considered critical functions. So functions that may have an impact if exploited. And just to give an example, and I'm going to use the same example later on, actually. So let's say if we talk about the water sector. So water, of course, if not the whole business of water is considered critical. And let me explain what I mean. So for example, if we look at the billing of a water company, of course, it's going to have huge impact on an organization if they cannot do the billing. But let's say from a national risk perspective, that's not something that it's going to have an impact, or at least, an impact right away on the population. But of course, if we talk about water purification or water distribution, that's something that's going to have an impact on people's lives. So that is a critical function. So that's just a distinction, right? So moving forward, as I said, my role as cybersecurity advisor, I go out to establish partnership with stakeholders. We do that in different ways through these type of venues, like conferences and all that. And you see, part of the activities I do, there's always something that I like to highlight, and that's the listen part. And part of what I do is also trying to understand what stakeholders really need, because we can offer something they don't need. So that's why it's important for us, to gather also that information. So I mentioned before that, we help organizations in understanding, how prepared they are, how resilient they are. And of course, one of the ways to do that is through assessments. So assessments give you the pulse, let's say, of your organization. So, how prepared you are, what are the possible gaps, things that you have to look at, things that you have to change. So as I mentioned before, there are, a number of assessments that we can help with. So this is all, in preparation, right? So to understand how you're doing, what your challenges are. And if you look at these actually list here, there are some assessments are considered very high level. From the top, you see the cyber resilience review. It's maturity level based type of assessment, so how mature you are. And then if you go down, let's say, of course, we also help or offer a very technical type of assessment, like a pen test. All that we offer, because we are the federal government, it comes at no cost. And I always prefer the no cost choice of word versus, let's say, free, because it's taxpayer money, so we all pay for it. But the good news is that the money is already being allocated in our budget. So we have that capability to help organizations offering these assessments, offering these services at no cost. I'm not going to go through each and every one, but I want to, leave you folks with at least a couple of ideas, I guess, things that you can do already tonight if you want to. And one of the the tools mentioned in the list is the CSET, the Cybersecurity Evaluation Tool. This is actually a pretty neat solution that deals with both OT and IT environments. For those that are not familiar with the OT, operational technology is basically the environments that you find in industrial control systems type of organizations. Again, with dealing with those physical security type controls or I mentioned for a switch or a pump or things like that. So that's considered OT, operational technology environment, versus IT, your computer, your laptops, your mobile phones, and so on and so forth. So actually, this tool, which you can download at any point of time, it's a free tool. If you just Google for a DHS or CISA, CSET tool, it will prompt you to the download page, and then there's guides, there's information. So you can download the tool, and actually that gives you the ability to do your own assessments if you want. There are actually quite a few compliance requirements that you can choose from, or even multiple ones, and that will give you, and you can go pretty deep depending on how you can select, let's say, the number of questions that you want to have, which means, of course, how deep you want to evaluate the organization, how thorough you want to do that, how thorough you want to be with that. So that's, let's say, the beauty of this tool. It's a simple tool, but actually with lots of capabilities. Also gives the ability to create your own diagrams, with pre-populated diagrams. You don't have to reinvent the wheel or to create, your own shapes and things like that. And also comes with templates, documents, references. So if you're looking for an incident response, plan, you can find it there, and then also reference where to look for more information. So it's such a pretty neat tool. And this is good for both actually small and even large organizations. It's a good, checkpoint, if you will. Something else that, came out beginning of this year, actually, it's what we call Cyber Essentials, Cyber Essentials, toolkit, actually. So Cyber Essentials, it's a set of guides that we are actually sharing. We are now on chapter or volume 3, if you will. You see the reference there, with the URL where to go for it. Again, you can always Google it and, type CISA Cyber Essentials, will take you there. And you see there's, the first one, for example, is the leader. So it gives, it's a 2 pages front. It's 1 page, it's a two sides, document where you have a list of activities that, leaders should do, plus with some references, where to look for that. So even if you don't have a cybersecurity program, that gives you, those basics. Then if you look at the user, the second volume, again, what's the user responsibility, right? And then the last one was the operation, the operational, let's say, aspect. So again, gives you references and list of activities to perform. So pretty neat, tools, things that you can actually go out at the end of the day today and download it and start, using it. Pretty useful, I guess, information. And again, of course, everything, comes with no cost. So something else I mentioned before, we are also in the business of helping organizations respond to incidents. So if you actually haven't had a chance to go to the CISA.gov website, I would definitely recommend doing that. On every page now, there's actually a report button, and even now there's a COVID-19 button. Anyway, so you can click on report, and that will give you some basic recommendations. So what to, if you're experiencing a ransomware, if you have some, let's say, the most common type of attacks, will tell you what to do. So it gives you some information, so like a checklist of some sort. But then there's also the ability to actually contact us. You can call us, you can email, you can fill out a form, And whenever you contact us, we will respond to you. And I have a slide specific for that. But on a CISA.gov website, there is also the way for you to sign up for alerts, reports, bulletins, tips, and so on and so forth. And that will give you, the vulnerabilities that have been published, for that month, or current, threats or threat actors, their techniques sometimes, and so again, pretty useful information if for you to receive as a, and not, even if you're not an IT person, just as a in general, to understand I guess what we're dealing with currently, and receiving tips and information like that. So part of what we do also, we help with exercises and training. Exercise, of course, extremely important to understand how prepared you are, so mostly from an incident response perspective. So there's a team dedicated just, for that. So they will do actual exercises for both cyber and physical. They can do full scope, they can do tabletop, they can do whatever. They can help with just giving you scenarios. If you want a scenario, they can give you playbooks if you want a playbook, or they can actually facilitate the exercise for your organization. And of course, if they do that, they will give a report at the end. Very useful, again, information. So part of what we do, of course, we have the federal government, so we also share information. And we do that in a number of ways. But of course, capability is very easy to use and sign up for is AIS, or Automated Indicator Sharing, where we basically share all the IOCs, or indicator compromises, that we collect from open source, internally. And for those not familiar with the term IOC, or indicator compromise, it's basically a digital fingerprint, if you will, of an attack. So where it comes from, the protocol, and so on and so forth, so that a system that you may have might be able to actually alert you, for that is present in your network, and then respond, by either creating an alert, or creating a ticket, or even blocking, depending on what you have in your organizations. And then if you're not part of an ISAC, information sharing analysis centers, there is at least one per sector. So you can look for one that maybe, if you're not part already of an ISAC, it's a good thing to be part of, because they will again share actually useful information and work with you and provide actually relevant information, because they work with all partners that are part of the same sector. So you have your peers, let's say, as part of that. Fusion centers, there is at least one per state. In some states, there's more than one, and they have basically a police presence, API, intelligence. So, and they were created mostly to deal with advanced situations, terrorism, but of course, cyber now, it's also part of what they do. I mentioned before that we also are in the business of incident response, and so we have a CISA Central is our, let's say, capability, our SOC capability, if you will. Just to give, I guess, to explain, the CISA is also responsible to protect the .gov domain. So we receive feeds for all the federal agencies. So we have good visibility of what's happening, plus some other partners. And we have people on the floor, and as you can see from the slide, there's actually people, representations from DoD, FBI, Secret Service, CIA, you name it. So everybody's kind of looking at the same information. That's again, after September 11, it became clear that agencies were not talking to each other. So now that's a way to be on the same page. But then, of course, organizations, agencies are going to respond depending on their mission, right? So if there's a foreign actor, probably the FBI will take it over. If there is a financial type of issue, maybe the Secret Service. Anyway, so that's, everybody is sitting there. So, and that's also where you can actually call for an incident, both cyber and physical. I mentioned that, we also have an incident response capability. Our HIRT team will respond to any incident or any request, coming from external partners, from our, partners. And of course, that depends on the type of incident. They may just respond by providing some recommendations, or they may decide to deploy some appliances if there's need, to do that, or they may actually decide to deploy personnel if there is, let's say, a major issue that it's having an impact, let's say, on a large population. And they have a way, let's say, to establish that. So there are two, ways of responding to an incident from a federal perspective: threat response and asset response. So your law enforcements are usually involved with the threat response, FBI, Secret Service, and so on and so forth. So CISA, us, we are responsible for asset response. The analogy given is usually, so we are the firefighters of an incident. So we go, we extinguish the fire. So our purpose is bringing a business back to business as quick as possible. That's our purpose. We don't do attribution. That's done by the threat response team, again, FBI or whomever. And that's the differentiation there. So that actually concludes the presentation. You see the contact information of my colleague in the Dallas area, Mr. Chad Adams. The email is there. Or if you have a general question, you can send it to sub-advisor, which is general email. With that said, I'm actually gonna turn back to Megan.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Franco. That was very educational as always. So we do have some questions coming in. If you have a few minutes free to do those quickly. The first one I'm going to ask you, everyone always asks, are the slides to be made available? I know before you say you send us a PDF, right? We'll be able to provide that?
Yeah, that can be provided, but usually what I prefer actually to share a PDF with a summary of the capabilities versus the slides that are more impersonal, if you will. So I'm happy to do that. People can email either maybe even through you, and I can definitely share that with you, or email even Chad Adams, who can provide that information, or the cybersecurity advisor email, generic email or general email, and they can request that. Or ask me directly, and you can share my information also with people that are interested in contacting me. So I'm definitely happy to do that. So, and actually that gives more, let's say, more details about the services versus just slides, let's say.
Perfect. Awesome. So if you want to have some follow-up conversations, feel free to email Franco or Chad if you're in this region. And then Franco, if you want to send us the PDF too, we can post that online. So if people just want to view that version.
Absolutely, we'll do that.
Perfect. So another question is, what is the best way to request the services offered by CISA? Should they contact Chad or you, or go online? What's the best way to do it?
So there are different ways. If you look at those actually fact sheets that I was talking about, that in this PDF file, there's a bunch of fact sheets. They also provide some contact information. So if you want to send a request to the assessment team and all that. So, but I always say it's probably easier if you do it through a CSA. Again, it could be done through me, it could be done through Chad if you're in that area, or you can send to the sub-advisor, let's say, general email address, and they can, help by actually putting in contact with the person that is closer to your region, to your area, and it's probably a better way, because then, it's not just a matter of requesting a service, but more to actually establish relationships. So it's easier, to do that. So also we can work together on a program, we can work on a strategy, and that's, let's say, part of what let's say that is probably a better way to do it, because then it's not just, well, I'm going to request a service, but, we're going to become partners, and then we work together, and we'll, and help, I guess, in a better way, rather than just, getting a service.
So people can even reach out before they have any issues. It's better to kind of reach out and be proactive, right?
Yes.
Okay, so there you go. Another question is, are there any standards or requirements for business to qualify for the services that CISA provides, or getting support if they are, going through an incident?
Sure. So, as I said, pretty much, most organizations, if not any, one time I think, I was asked if a car wash company was also, would qualify. And so, let's say probably not, there's not much impact there. So the rationale or the criteria is if let's say that organization may have or let's say what is provided by the organization may have an impact on a population, on people's lives, then of course you qualify. And most organizations fall into that, right? So if you're a school, of course, you qualify. If you're a financial institution, of course you qualify. People know losing money is not a good thing. If you, water, electric. So pretty much, most organizations will fall into that. and therefore they can qualify for. And again, then everybody can qualify, but the difference is, of course, what the services that you might be able to get just because of the nature of, again, what you're dealing with, right? So, but definitely everybody can contact us, and we are happy to help understanding if they qualify, and definitely working with them. So.
Okay. And then there was another question, kind of similar. How do I know if I qualify as a critical infrastructure?
Yeah, that's pretty much the way you do that. So you can contact us, and then, but there is a definition in the website, and then it talks about the impact that that may have on people's lives and all that. So, but again, you can argue that most organizations will have an impact, right? So it's and I think it's kind of open for interpretation for a reason, because again, then it's not necessarily the title, it's more what you do, and even a small financial institution maybe dealing with a large portfolio, well, that may have a big impact, right? So it's a small organization, but with a possible big impact, or something along those lines, right?
Yeah. Okay. So if people aren't sure, they can always just reach out again, be emailed to
Yep.
you or chat, and I'm sure you're able to help in some way or other.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Franco. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but again, it was a pleasure having you. We always love having you. I'm sure we'll see you again soon, hopefully in person eventually the next year.
Yeah, let's hope for that. Yeah.
Right.
Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, in the meantime, take care, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you, Franco. Okay, all right. Well, thank you everyone who is still on the line. As a reminder, all of these sessions and slides from today will be posted on our website within a few days. So if you missed any of the presentations, or you want to listen again, you can do so by visiting cybersummitusa.com. And feel free to take the next hour or so remaining of the event to go and visit all the virtual booths from our sponsors and our partners. If you had any questions remaining that you wanted to go over with them, they'd be happy to talk with you still. And just to explore the different solutions that are available to you in the different services. As a reminder, if you visit all of the solution providers, you will be entered to win 1 of 10 Amazon gift cards, $100 gift cards. So definitely be sure to meet with all the booths, and those winners will be announced in a few days after the event. And then continuing education credits, if you are interested in those, they will be emailed to you simply just by attending. We will email it to you probably within about a week to the email address that you registered with. So keep your eyes peeled for a week time. It should come in. If you don't receive it, feel free to email us about getting that. And lastly, we have our second annual Houston Cybersecurity Summit coming up on Thursday, October 1st. The content will be different with different speakers, so we'd love to have you join us for that as well, virtual, of course. If you would like to register to join us, you can do so online, cybersummitusa.com, and it'll ask you for a registration code. Just use code CYBER20. It's free to attend, and we would love to have you. But in the meantime, we encourage you again to visit the booth. Thank you again so much for joining us, and hopefully we will see all of you again sometime soon in person. But in the interim, stay safe and stay healthy. Thanks, everybody.